Okay, fans, welcome to the fourth episode of my baseball podcast, Straight Outta Sacramento. I've renamed it to Curveballs and Changeups. It started out as the Hot Corner, as you have heard in my previous episodes, but I decided there are too many versions of that name out there in podcast land. It needed a bit more of a distinction. On Curveballs and Changeups, I make observations about the teams I grew up with as an East Bay kid, the San Francisco Giants, and the team formerly known as the Oakland A's. Both teams will be represented in Sacramento, the Giants AAA Rivercats and the Major League A's. So curveballs and change-ups it is. I might throw a fastball here and there, but I've got a bunch of off-speed pitches to keep the hitters off balance. Speaking of which, Hayden Birdsong threw a spring training masterpiece Sunday afternoon against the Sacramento A's, striking out 8 in 5 innings. He kept A's hitters off stride with his beautiful assortment of nasty junk, slow curveballs, sharp sliders, filthy changeups, all with a 95-mile-an-hour fastball in the back of your mind. I'll get into that and some observations about the Giants and A's in a moment. Just a heads up, in today's main feature, I look at how analytics have taken the fun out of the game, or as the Washington Post had it in a series of stories, is ruining the aesthetics of the game. First, a quick take on the Giants and A's who faced each other in their final Cactus League matchup Sunday. The Giants won 7-3, their record improving to a league best 15-5. The A's are now 12-12. Hayden Birdsong, the tall, lanky young right-hander with a scowl that belies his baby face, was the story. His performance was effortless, flipping pitch after nasty pitch from the mound as if he was toying with the A's hitters. One note, 2 of the A's top hitters were not in the lineup, Lawrence Butler or Miguel Andujar. After starting out with 9 hits in his first 16 at-bats, Butler has gone 3 for 18, so it may have been a good time to give him a rest. Andujar, on the other hand, is one of their hottest hitters, hitting in 8 straight games and at .441. Still, there was no mistaking that Birdsong continues to make the case for the 5th spot in the Giants' rotation. He has now allowed only 1 earned run in 12 innings, walking only 2 and racking up 18 strikeouts. Against the A's Sunday, he allowed a couple singles but was never in any kind of trouble. Hunter Pence, the Giants' TV color man and former right fielder, gave a pretty tight scouting report. He said, quote, "He was pretty dominant, filling up the strike zone, was coming out hot, creating tons of angles. The off-speed was working, and the command, the attack, it was impressive," end of quote. This was one of the rare games this spring that actually was televised, so I've only read accounts of how good Landon Roop has been in his bid for the 5th spot in the rotation. The conventional wisdom from beat writers is that the first 4 spots are pretty much sewn up by Logan Webb, Justin Verlander, Robbie Ray, and Jordan Hicks. Hicks, though, could make it interesting if he keeps up the pace he's had so far. He's given up 7 earned runs in 6 2/3 innings. So the competition between Roop and Birdsong seems to be for that 5th spot for now. One thing that has been driving the competition through the entire Giant staff is the big idea of, quote, filling the strike zone, as Pence called it. J.P. Martinez, the pitching coach, and his coaches made it a challenge to Giants pitchers to be the most aggressive in attacking the strike zone. Justice de los Santos, a beat writer for the San Jose Mercury News, laid it out in a story. He wrote that the Giants have an award called First Down Champ, given to the pitcher who throws the most strikes in a game. They post photos of the winner in their younger days. Justin Verlander got one recently posted of him as a high school quarterback. Tristan Beck has an interesting take in the De Los Santos story. He said, quote, "It's less than just throwing strikes. It's about competing, trusting your stuff. And that's more the mentality they're going for." Now, I don't know a single team that has ever said it wasn't important to throw strikes. Every single pitching coach in the history of the game has preached strike throwing as the key to pitching. But whatever pitching coach J.P. Martinez has been saying to get that point across has worked almost magically. The Giants pitching staff has thrown the fewest walks in all of baseball this spring. No walks is the mantra. They've issued 48 walks in 21 games. That's 23 fewer than the next best team, the Cardinals. The Giants lead all of the major leagues with a 1.18 WHIP whip. That's walks and hits per inning. And are second in team ERA at 3.82. both connected to the low walk rate. It's pretty basic. Being aggressive in the strike zone with confidence in your stuff is key to staying ahead in the count, putting hitters on the defensive. One problem, you can fill the strike zone and avoid walks but still get hammered if you aren't making quality pitches. That's what happened Sunday with A's lefty starter Jeffrey Springs. He took it on the chin for a second time against the Giants lineup, allowing back-to-back home runs to Willy Adames and Wilmer Flores and 4 runs in 3 2/3 innings. In 2 starts against San Francisco, his most recent starts, Springs has given up 7 earned runs on 15 hits in 8 innings. Sure, he's walked only 1, but he's been too hittable. The Adames home run was a classic game of wits won by Adames. Springs had just thrown a fastball up by Adames. He was late, not because he can't hit a fastball, but because he was guessing changeup. Springs might have either thought Adames would be looking for another changeup, or that he actually could throw a fastball by him, so he threw another fastball up, and Adames had reset his sights for that fastball and clobbered it. The next hitter, Flores, on the other hand, looked for that changeup and got it in his wheelhouse, down and in, and hit it out to left. Springs was lucky, actually, that he didn't give up 4 home runs in a row. Matt Chapman hit the next one that was caught at the wall in left center, and Gerard Encarnacion blasted one over the center fielder's head for a double. Encarnacion is for real, folks. I'm saying this now, and I don't like to predict, but if he gets 500 at-bats this year, he will drive in 100 runs. Encarnacion had one of the game's most impressive at-bats in the 5th inning against the flame-throwing A's closer Mason Miller, who had just struck out Flores and Chapman on 2 nasty sliders away. Miller was hitting 102 miles an hour on the fastball, so it just wasn't fair. Encarnacion could have been excused for thinking slider away when the count went to no balls and 2 strikes, but he squared up a 102-mile-an-hour fastball for another blast, this time over the right fielder's head for his second double of the game. Hunter Pence pointed out that he let the fastball get deep so that he could react to a slider if it came. It didn't, but Encarnacion was ready for the heat, too. The A's did creep back to within 3 runs of the Giants when Brent Rooker doubled in a run against Kyle Harrison, and Logan Davidson hit a 2-run home run off of Harrison, his first of the spring. Davidson was rewarded with that home run by being sent to the minor league camp at the end of the day. Rooker is trying to find his swing. He struck out in his 2 other at-bats and is hitting 182 for the spring. Harrison has likely pitched himself out of a rotation spot for now. He gave up 3 runs in 3 innings and now has a 10.80 ERA in 6 2/3 innings this spring. He may have a couple more spring starts, but it would be a huge upset if he doesn't start the season in Sacramento. Just too many good pitchers ahead of him right now. Monday, the Giants and A's go their own way. Justin Verlander will take the ball against the Chicago White Sox. He went 5 solid innings in his previous start and is hoping to continue to ramp up the endurance. For the A's, Logan Harris gets a start against the Seattle Mariners Monday. So far, he's been limited to very short stints, piling up 9 innings over 6 appearances. He's been unhittable, allowing only 1 run on 3 hits, striking out 11. But he's walked 9. So now it's a matter of getting more consistently in the strike zone with his good stuff. One note, it was great to see Pablo Sandoval in the Giants dugout Sunday. Giants president Buster Posey has been bringing some of the old Giants into spring training as a way to create a connection to players who knew what it took to win. No word of how Pablo's reunion with Justin Verlander went. Okay, on to the topic of the day, analytics. I liken the purveyors of analytics to being bloodless, humorless bureaucrats. There's no joy or passion to their work, just a slavish obedience to calculations that have led to awful trends such as infield shifts, an over-reliance on bullpens, obsessions with pitch counts, which have led to a devaluation of the starting pitcher. My main focus today is baseball teams' poor use of analytics to guide their game strategies. But what's been just as hurtful to the aesthetics of the game is the buy-in from the so-called punditry class. Everybody seems to have fallen under the spell of analytics information that should typically be reserved for team scouting departments as they assess their talent. So we have to hear about a hitter's exit velocities and swing paths or a pitcher's spin rate so that we can, what? Predict their performance? So we can win our fantasy league? Worse yet, so we can win in the gambling scene? Okay, back to my critique of the game's use of analytics and how it's destroying the aesthetics of the game. The epidemic in strikeouts may be the most glaring example of how analytics are taking the fun out of the game, including eliminating drama and action. Each year, the strikeout numbers continue to spiral upwards. Last year, there were a record 41,179 strikeouts, 10,000 more than the major leagues had in the year 2000. That means fewer balls in play, less action. Even with a much needed and welcome rule change that banned defensive shifts, the action on the field is down. Strikeouts are the result of several factors. 1. Swing paths or launch angles. Coaching has placed huge emphasis on hitters using an uppercut to maximize their power. 2. A disregard for the two-strike approach. Sure, there are some players who change their big swing approach with 2 strikes, but they're the exceptions. More players continue to use big swings on 2 strikes. Even the players who in previous generations would be considered punch-and-judy hitters are swinging big with 2 strikes, rather than just trying to put the ball in play. 3. Pitchers are being developed to maximize their power, to throw all out, empty the tank, with new approaches to increasing their spin rate. The average fastball is now approaching 95 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour faster than the average fastball 40 years ago. 4. Relief. The use of relief pitchers has resulted in more strikeouts. With a focus on maxing out, relievers come in fresh with one thing in mind: to blow hitters away. Higher strikeout totals are the result of relievers coming into games earlier than ever and more frequently. One of the impacts of chasing max effort velocity, the emphasis on maxing out and pursuing nastier stuff, has resulted in an epidemic of arm injuries. A significant Major League Baseball study released last December showed hundreds of pages of research and evidence to bear this out. The irony is that the number of arm injuries has soared as the number of complete games have almost disappeared. Last year, there were 28 complete games in all of the major leagues. That's one less than what Gaylord Perry had by himself in 1973. The decline has been on a severe nosedive. In 1973, there were 1,061 complete games across the major leagues. 5 years later, there were 1,034. A decade later, in 1988, complete games were down to 622. That was more than halved 10 years later to 302 in 1998. And on until finally in 2016, the number of complete games fell below 100 for the first time. All in the service of watching the pitch count. For the longest time, Major League Baseball used arm injuries as a rationale for pitch count limits. But that's a fallacy. The 100 pitch limit was an arbitrary number that had no science behind it, but was adopted as the standard in the early 2000s by baseball in its typical herd mentality. In 1998, pitchers threw more than 125 pitches in a game 272 times. 75 other times, pitchers threw 134 or more pitches. Now a manager is liable to get arrested if he allows his pitcher to throw more than 110 pitches. In 1999, it can be singled out to a single orthopedic surgeon, his suggestion that pitchers be limited to 100 pitches to avoid injury. It was a nice round number, but it was arbitrary and would soon become conventional wisdom, a ballpark figure that may work for some, but is unnecessary for others. There's no data to suggest that 100 is the magic number of fatigue, no data to point to injuries for pitchers who threw more than 100 pitches in a game. Ultimately, this arbitrary concept called the pitch count has done great harm to baseball's aesthetics. It steals glory. It's robbed fans of the coveted historical figure. The legendary stars of the mound have been replaced by a parade of nameless, faceless relievers who come in for an inning at a time, throw their 100-mile-an-hour fastballs, and rack up their holds, giving way to the next nameless and faceless pitcher. The gritty, gutsy performances of the starting pitchers have been watered down. Instead of throwing a complete game with a mastery of deliveries that require a variety of ways of getting hitters out, starting pitchers are asked to put in a 6-inning workout that's more likely than not to end in a no decision. Hence the vanishing 20-game winner. We barely get any 15-game winners anymore. The low pitch limit has affected the game in such a way that now Most rosters carry at least 13 pitchers. When you're yanking your starting pitcher after 100 pitches, which for many means around 6 innings, you need bullpen depth to cover fully 1/3 of the games. That means at most there are 4 position players available on the bench, and one of those has to be a backup catcher, so really you have 3 position players on the bench. This limits a manager's maneuverability, which limits strategic moves, which makes the game less interesting. Rather than limiting a pitcher's workload, baseball should move away from requiring pitchers to max out on their pitches and towards smarter pitching. That's how you keep pitchers healthy and in the game and into the late innings. The overarching effect of analytics has been that managers have often lost their ability to see the game with their own eyes. They've been conditioned to go strictly by the dictates of analytics. I can't think of a better example of this than something that happened a decade ago in the National League playoffs. You remember the moment, especially if you're a Giants fan who goes back to their pennant-winning days of the 2010s. It was a move that defined Matt Williams as a manager, a move from which he never regained his reputation. He is, of course, the former great third baseman for the Giants, who now coaches third base for the Giants. I saw him come up as a rookie in 1989, savored his career in San Francisco, and was sad to see him dealt away for Jeff Kent. But sadly, Matt Williams will always be the manager who made the move that defined the folly of analytics. It's maybe my all-time favorite analytics backfire. I have to say I do root for analytics-based decisions to backfire, if only to finally convince baseball people to drop the whole charade. This was a blunder that was so glaring that I had brief hopes then that baseball would take a second look at whether managers' in-game decisions should be governed so strictly by analytics. Predictably, nobody learned from this blunder. This backfire came in the 2014 divisional playoffs between the Giants and the Nationals. It became known as the move that sealed the fate of the Washington Nationals season in 2014. Washington starter Jordan Zimmerman was on the mound with a 1-0 lead with 2 outs in the 9th inning of Game 2 of the 2014 National League Division Series, but he made the fatal mistake of walking Joe Panik. And out came Washington's manager, Matt Williams, heading to the mound and calling to the bullpen without hesitation. We all know the outcome. The Giants tied the game that inning and eventually won in 18 innings on their way to winning that series. Let's do a little walk back of this delicious story of an analytics failure. It was clear that Matt Williams had made his mind up before the inning started that he would take Zimmerman out at the first sign of trouble. In fact, after the game, Williams defended his move. Quote, "Why did we decide to take him out? Because if he got in trouble in the 9th inning or got a base runner, we were going to bring our closer in. That's what we've done all year." That was a statement filled with contradictions. First, was Zimmerman in trouble after walking Panik? Or was the decision to take him out after they got a base runner? Second, Zimmerman had just thrown a no-hitter in his previous start. He'd thrown a shutout in June. He had 3 complete games in 2014, 4 in 2013. So it wasn't true that they'd always gone to a closer. But here came Drew Storen, who promptly, on the first pitch, gave up a base hit to Buster Posey. 2 pitches later, Pablo Sandoval lashed his double down the left field line to drive in Panik with a tying run. Posey was cut down trying to score from first, sending the game reeling its way to an 18-inning marathon, settled by Brandon Belt's dramatic home run, which paved the way to the Giants' return to the NLCS and to the Nationals' everlasting regret. Williams said he'd do it again, no regrets. He'd done that all year. Well, first of all, Storen was only closing because the season's primary closer, Alfonso Soriano, had blown 7 games and was in a month-long slump. Storen had picked up closer duties on September 7th of that year, saving 10 games in a 19-day stretch in that final month. So maybe he was a bit overworked heading into the playoffs, but he done well. But Storen had some postseason history that could have served as a red flag. 2 years earlier, in 2012, in fact, the last time he'd pitched in a playoff game, Drew Storen blew Game 5 of the National League Division Series against the Cardinals, and it was a disaster. Storen came on in the 9th inning with a 7-5 lead that day, 3 outs away from sending the Nationals to the 2012 National League Championship Series. Storen gave up a leadoff double to Carlos Beltran, but got the next 2 hitters, 1 out away. But it all fell apart when he walked the next hitter, and then the next hitter to load the bases. Davey Johnson, the Nationals manager then, stuck with Storen, who gave up a game-tying 2-run single to Daniel Descalso, a lifetime .235 hitter who had homered an inning earlier. After David Freese moved to third on the hit, Descalso stole second. Up stepped .218 lifetime hitter Pete Kozma, who with 2 strikes stroked a 2-run single for a 9-7 lead, which the Cardinals did not relinquish. Storen had given up 4 runs on 3 hits and 2 walks in a disaster that would repeat itself 2 years later. A footnote, the Cardinals would end up losing the NLCS to the Giants that year, 2012, in 7 games after they took a 3-1 lead. The Giants, pitching of Barry Zito, Ryan Vogelsong, and Matt Cain, held the Cardinals to a single run over the final 3 games to get to their second of 3 World Series in 5 years. Back to Matt Williams and the 2014 managerial backfire that defined his legacy. His move was predicated on everything that is wrong about analytics. Zimmerman had just thrown his 100th pitch when he walked Panic. That pitch threshold is the bane of the game, the source of so much that has gone wrong with the game. It sets off alarm bells in the gleaming, shiny administrative offices of analytics departments around the game. And that sense of dread and panic has been absorbed by every single manager in the game today. It's been so long ingrained in baseball's front offices and around the game that broadcasters and pundits are now conditioned to alert fans that a pitcher has reached a certain pitch count. Quote, "He's thrown 42 pitches in 2 innings. He won't last long if he keeps that up." Or, "Oh boy, he's got a no-hitter here in the 8th inning, but he's at 104 pitches. It'll be interesting to see if they let him come out for the 9th. Please. It's rare indeed if a manager does not bow to the dictates of the game and allow a pitcher to go much past the 100-pitch threshold, even if a pitcher has a chance to make history. That 100-pitch limit used to be reserved for pitchers just coming off the disabled list, which is what it was called till a few years ago. That 100-pitch limit was intended to let them build their arm strength back to normal, the normal being 125 to 140 pitches to get through the 8th or 9th inning. Now, if you get through 6 innings, you've worked deep into the game. Now, a manager and his pitching coach will get that look of concern and panic going in the 6th and 7th inning, nervous discussions creating a vibe that can't be good for pitchers' morale. One of my least favorite images is of a manager and a pitching coach who can be seen in the dugout shaking their starting pitcher's hand after closing out a strong 6th inning. So, Zimmerman had thrown his 100th pitch and was 1 out from a 3-hit shutout. Why not keep him in? He did have 10 starts with more than 100 pitches, throwing as many as 114 in a 2-hit shutout over the Padres in early June. Zimmerman was proven. He'd led the National League in wins with 19 in 2013 and had gone 14-5 in 2014 with a 2.66 ERA in 199 and 2/3 innings. He had easily handled the Giants in August, allowing only 2 runs on 7 hits in 8 innings and a 6-2 win. Maybe Matt Williams was worried about the next hitter after Panic walked, Buster Posey. But Zimmerman had held him to 1 hit, a single, and 4 at-bats in that playoff game, and 1 hit and 3 at-bats, also a single, in the August game. The fact is that Zimmerman was in command. He'd retired 20 in a row before that Panic walk. He was at the peak of his career and was as dominating a pitcher as there was in the National League at that moment. Oh, remember, he had thrown a no-hitter against the Miami Marlins in the final regular season game. He struck out 10 and allowed just 2 base runners in that no-hitter. The point is, Matt Williams had plenty of history to rely on to keep Zimmerman in. If Matt Williams had allowed his eyes to see what was in front of him, if he allowed any true baseball instinct to govern his thinking, Zimmerman would have, or should have been, the man to close out the game. The 1-0 game, which would have tied the series at 1 game apiece, and who knows how the rest of the series turns out. I found some comments Zimmerman made 5 years after that game when he was closing out his career with the Detroit Tigers. He told a story of regret to the Nationals TV network, Mid-Atlantic Sports Network. Quoting from the article, Zimmerman still believes he had enough left to finish that crucial game and deliver a postseason win to the Nationals. Quote, "Yeah, I wish I was able to stay out there for another batter," Zimmerman said. "I have a lot of people that bring that up to me still to this day. Wish they would have kept you in there. You're not the only one. I felt like I was in control the whole game. Zimmerman kept his opinion to himself that night about the fateful move by Williams, but nearly 5 years later he says that decision still stings. Quote, "Just one walk at the end of the game and I get pulled," Zimmerman said. "I was pretty disappointed about it at the time, but obviously I'm not going to say it at the time. Obviously I said it was the right move. I said all the right things, but as the years gone by, obviously I would have wanted to be out there and didn't really even get a chance to plead my case when Matt came out there. He'd already called to the bullpen, so there was no rewinding at that point." Continuing with the story, most times when a manager comes to the mound, he checks in with his pitcher before making the call to the pen. But Zimmerman had turned his back and was caught off guard when he saw Williams approach him. Again, Zimmerman's quote, "That situation, I walked him, and I still remember to this day," Zimmerman recounted. I got the ball, I turned around on the mound, I checked where the infielders were, and I looked back, and he's on the line. And I didn't see him call for the bullpen because he called so quick before the first couple steps. And he got out there, and I was expecting him to ask me how I'm doing, and he put his hand out to reach for the ball, which at that point, there's really nothing you can say. But now, back in my voice, this is so poignant, so tragic in baseball terms. Williams had panicked. He refused to see what was plain for everyone else to see, that Zimmerman was still in control. Williams capitulated to the demands of the analytics department. And what good did it do for him? He was fired a year later, never to be hired as a manager again. The problem is that no one in baseball ever learns from this stuff. They write it off to bad luck or just the cost of doing business. They hold stubbornly to their adherence to the laws of analytics, no matter how often they're proven wrong. Baseball is often cruel, but even that cruelty is debased by managerial moves based strictly on scripts drawn from pre-configured calculations. It's like a disease that has infected everyone in the game. This belief that making a managerial move is better every time than not making one, that the alternative in the bullpen is always better than the person you have on the mound. And if your move backfires, no big deal because that's what those in the analytics department said would work, or because you can't second guess a supposedly proven theory of the case. Maybe one day the analytics fever will break. Baseball will return to allowing the game to unfold in ways you can't predict and shouldn't try to. The question is whether baseball teams can resist the temptation to use information they think can give them a competitive advantage. But if everyone is using the same tools, where really are the competitive advantages? What's needed is for baseball to strike the right balance between striving for competitive advantage with statistical information and for allowing the game to take its natural course. Let pitchers who are effective, who are in command, stay in the game and finish the job. Let managers rely on instinct rather than the commands from the analytics department. Let the beauty of the game, yes, the aesthetics of the game, be allowed to thrive. Okay, one last item. I'm going to recommend 2 baseball books out of my collection. If you're a Giants fan, you would love Arnold Haino's A Day in the Bleachers, the story of the 1954 World Series game in which Willie Mays made his famous catch. With scorebook in hand and a vantage point of Mays racing full tilt toward him in the bleachers, Haino tells a poetic story of how we all came to understand the greatness of Willie Mays. Another book that A's fans would love is Jason Turbo's Dynastic, Bombastic, Fantastic, Reggie, Raleigh, Catfish, and Charlie Finley's Swingin' A's. As the book's sleeve has it, it's a sprawling, brawling history of one of baseball's unforgettable teams, a tribute to the turbulent, magical time. Okay, that's all I have for today. Thank you for tuning into Sacramento's Curveballs and Changeups with me, your host, Steve Harmon. You can find Sacramento's best baseball podcast on Spotify and wherever else you can listen to podcasts. Until next time, lay off the slider away.